Hello everyone, I'm Ryson Sinek, and today we're going to be talking about something much slower. This is a fantasy 4X strategy game developed by Illwinter Game Design. 4X stands for Expand, Explore, Exploit, and Exterminate. More famous ones being the Civilization series. And yeah, I know it should be called 4E because they all start with E, but 4E doesn't sound as good as 4X. You play as a warlord with some simple troops, and build up your territory to destroy your opponents and own the fantastical land of Elysium. And that's pretty much all there is for story. Let's look at gameplay. You pick your army, build up resources, gather your troops, and destroy your enemies. You conquer areas by moving one of your armies to a location. That location then gets a color border to signify that you own it. A location owned by your army will gather resources, reveal parts of the map, allow troop recruitment, or various other benefits. Each army gathers resources. All armies gather gold and iron, which are used in troop recruitment. However, some armies also gather special resources, like the druid who gathers herbs from forests, or the dwarf queen who gathers gems from mines, or the high cultist who gathers sacrifices from towns and cities. Yeah, not all these armies are what you would consider good. In fact, some of them are outright evil, like the necromancer, or the high cultist, or the demonologist. Each army has their basic troops, the foot soldiers that you hire in groups, and the commanders which are recruited individually. The only way you can move an army is in a group that are led by a commander. So the armies are stacks of troops led by the various leaders, non-moving troops that cannot leave their designated location, or special units that are controlled by the computer. Armies can get really big in longer games, especially if the computer is controlling the Burgermeister. Then you see things like stacks of 300 halflings just roaming the countryside, decimating any city foolish enough to stand in their way. What was that? Let's talk warfare. Warfare is controlled automatically, with both sides controlled by the computer. Now I bet some of you are saying, but I want to control my army. And I understand that thought. But this streamlined warfare works pretty well. It isn't just throwing two armies at each other and hoping the dice land in your favor. There is some real strategy involved, but it's mostly in building the army and getting the right troops together. For example, the Troll King is a big unit and can probably take out a large group of troops on his own. But if the enemy has a lot of ranged units, the Troll King will be dead very quickly, and then you just lost the most powerful unit in your army. The game is mostly about knowing what units would be most effective at the time. It's a game of large unit strategy, not small unit tactics. Gathering your armies and managing your resources can take some getting used to, and it will probably take a bit of time to completely understand how to make each army effective. Some of the armies can use their resources in very strange ways. Ways that seem very powerful, but don't pay out very well in the long run. Or worse, can completely destroy your troops and set you back so far that there's no way for you to win. This happened to me a few times, like when I summoned this ancient Hydra, and it killed me. Some characters can summon big, powerful units, but that big, powerful unit didn't want to be summoned. So it'll take its price, which is usually you. With those armies, it's very much a risk and reward game, and with others, it's more of a game of how effective can I get my troops before sending them out. Let's look at what you're facing on your path to conquering Elysium. Your opponents can be either AI-controlled armies or human-controlled armies. While you could play this game hot seat, I don't suggest it unless you're allied. You should probably go with an internet connection of some sort. Opposing armies will pick from the same list you do, and AI opponents will play them decently well. While there are AI difficulty options, and a good amount with 10 different options, it doesn't really affect how smart the AI actually plays. At higher levels, the AI might be a little more daring with their attacks, or keep a more effective guard over their held locations, but it's more because of increased funds rather than an actual increase in intelligence. Each level grants the AI additional resources, but how aggressively they act will usually depend on their chosen army rather than their AI level. The AI will act differently depending on their class, with some sending large roaming stacks at regular intervals, with others being more content to just not send out armies at any time. Now, there is another force. You not only have to deal with your opponents, but independent troops as well. The game refers to them as independents, but the manual calls them by the far more entertaining name of snakes. I think I might adopt that for wandering armies in some games. Snakes. The snakes will invade all the time. They spawn randomly, sometimes from certain locations, but sometimes they just spawn. They want your resources, not for themselves, they just don't want you to have them. They're also really good at weeding out your competition early. Defend your territory from these snakes. They might not want your resources for themselves, but they will stop at nothing to make sure that you aren't getting them. The addition of a constant independent force makes the game a bit more interesting, because you're not just fighting your designated opponents, but this wildcard factor as well. Whew. That was a lot of gameplay, but really that's what this game is about. There's not a lot of story other than the descriptions for each of the armies, and of course what little stories you make for yourself. Which is something I do a lot while playing these slower games. I will talk out loud and give my troops orders. I don't know, maybe that's just me. No, it couldn't just be me. Could it? No. Let's talk visuals. The visuals are simple. They're straightforward pixel art with very little animations. And I love it. Yeah, it's a little rough, but it doesn't need to be flashy. The simple design is just enough to show what it needs to, while evoking enough of the imagination for a person to fill in the blanks themselves. Musically, Conquest of Elysium is a little odd. The music works, but it will just end sometimes, and the next track only starts at the beginning of a new turn. So if you don't get your turn done quickly enough, you'll be stuck listening to nothing for a while. And now we'll move to our good, bad, strange, and bland. For the good, we have our options. Not only do you have army choice, you have time period, which affects different structures and various snakes roaming around. You have your enemy armies, amount of players, map size, AI difficulty, custom mods, and that's all before starting an actual game. For the bad, we have large army issues. You cannot scroll around in the army view. This might not seem like a big problem, but in longer games, this becomes a major issue. Sometimes it would result in me making really bad decisions because I would be unable to get a good look at my entire army, because you can't scroll around the army list. So when a stack gets beyond 300 troops, and they do, you will have no idea what troops you'll be going up against, or even what you have. For the strange, we're going to talk AI. While playing, I noticed an issue. Sometimes the AI will simply not end it. They have the troops, they know where I am. Why do they not just end my struggling little group? It got to the point in one game where I was just sitting there. No army, nothing going right, and the AI refused to end the war. I had no forces, I had no resources, and the AI just watched my final stronghold. Just end it. It got to the point where I had to leave my final stronghold before they would actually destroy my army. And now for the bland. The win condition. There is only one, be the last one standing. I like it when 4X games have additional win conditions other than just destroy all your enemies. And something really cool would be a special win condition for each army. Yes, it would take a bit of work, but these people have shown that they're willing to put in extra work to make a good game. To sum up, I really enjoy Conquest of Elysium 3, and highly recommend it. While a single game may take over an hour or two, they don't feel boring. This is a very slow game, and it takes a good chunk of time, but each game you play is enjoyable, even if you lose. Conquest of Elysium 3 is available on Desura, Gamersgate, and Steam for $9.99, and is available for Android devices on the Google Store, also for $9.99. Till next time, I'm Ryson Sinek, and I'm going to take over the land of Elysium one more time. You know, one more. Huh?